Thank you. The reading this morning is from the Gospel according to St. John, chapter 1, reading verses 14 to 18. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified to him and cried out, "This was he of whom I said, 'He who comes after me ranks ahead of me, because he was before me.' From his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. The law indeed was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known." Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sess. There's an actress I admire. She's called Celia Imrie, and I saw her once at Waterloo Underground Station. She was going down the escalator ahead of me, and because of the crush, I couldn't get anywhere near her. Not that I would have known what to do or say had I been able to catch up with her, but I saw her. This person whom I only knew through a screen, I saw her. She really exists, and it made my day. Actually, I had such a dull job that it made my week, and it probably made my month. In these days, when we're spending more time than ever at home, when we're probably watching more TV than we ever have, and when we're missing the physical presence of our family and friends, I think we have a better idea of how important that sense of encounter is. John, the writer of this gospel, this good news, says, "The Word, the Son of God, through whom God created the world, became real." In John's language, he became flesh and he lived among us. Eugene Peterson's transliteration of the Bible, The Message, says, "The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. The cosmic and distant suddenly became real and local." That persecutor of the believers, Paul, encountered Jesus in a vision on the road to Damascus. Previously, he dismissed this new faith, the way, and persecuted its adherents. But when he actually met with Jesus, it changed his path, his life, not his character. He was just as zealous, but now he was zealous for Jesus. That act of encounter, when the story becomes real, is life-changing. Perhaps you had an encounter with Jesus that first brought you into faith with him. Bizarrely, I had an encounter with Jesus many years ago on Waterloo Station when he called my name. Not at the same time as I saw Celia Imrie, that would be weird. But this time at the British Rail terminal, not the underground station. Jesus called. He called my name and I answered. And thus began my journey into ministry. When we experience an encounter with Jesus, what we may have heard or known in our heads becomes more profound. It takes on new meaning. The colors are brighter and the music is louder. And knowledge of Jesus moves into the forefront of our consciousness and dominates our thinking and our actions. What John records in his gospel is that what he has known with his head has suddenly become real, three-dimensional, and there in front of him. And John has seen his glory, and that he is full of grace and truth. Throughout John's account of Jesus' life, the gospel, there is a theme of belief. We mentioned this last week, that John uses a particular form of a Greek word that means believe, rather than just have faith when he's writing to the believers, making it an active relationship rather than a passive position. And along the way, John records several who don't believe, several instances of people who don't believe, or don't believe until Jesus is revealed as the Christ, the Messiah, the promised one, the one who is coming to save. He records that near the beginning of his ministry, Jesus was unwilling to go about openly in Judea healing people because the Jews were looking for an opportunity to kill him. So Jesus' brothers challenged him to move his ministry into the public arena. They challenged him, saying, "Show yourself to the world." And John comments that not even his brothers believed in him. Jesus replied that his time had not yet come. The crowds in Jerusalem failed to believe that Jesus was the Messiah, recorded in John's Gospel, because they knew where Jesus came from. He came from Nazareth, and they expected that they wouldn't be party to that information about the real Messiah. And of course, Thomas, whom we know as Doubting Thomas, although he's not given this name in the Gospel, John records Jesus' encounter with him after his resurrection. "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe," said Thomas. So when Jesus appeared to the disciples a week later, he invited Thomas to do just that. To which Thomas replied, "My Lord and my God." There's something visceral and undeniable about encounter. John knew it. Paul knew it. Those of us who've experienced an encounter with Jesus know it. It's real, it's undeniable, and it's revealing. John has seen the glory and the grace of Jesus. He's also seen that this grace is not just contained within the Godhead, but flows from him to those who believe. Grace upon grace. Some translations, if you've got an NIV translation that you were following along with, say one blessing after another. But it literally means grace upon grace. Grace and truth, John says. Grace upon grace. The word that John uses, which we translate as grace, is charis. It's a Greek word. It's sometimes used as a name. It means God's grace or unmerited favor, his loving kindness. And it's a translation of the Hebrew word hesed, which we find often in the Old Testament, which means God's covenant faithfulness to his people. Grace upon grace. Jesus came that we may encounter God through him. John's writing says, we, that is the disciples, saw his glory because we encountered God through him. We saw God in him, the glory of the Father revealed. And from the fullness, the Greek word pleroma in Jesus, the completeness, the perfection, Jesus, whose purpose was to bring life and life in abundance, as John later records Jesus as saying, "I have come that you may have life and life to the full." From that fullness is found the grace of God displayed in Jesus. Charin antin charitos, grace upon grace. One blessing after another is really an inadequate translation. Old grace replaced by new grace. The coming of Jesus is the blessing of grace coming on top of the grace already extended to God's people. So the grace given through Moses is overlaid or added to by the grace bestowed through Jesus, true grace, final grace, the ultimate demonstration of God's covenant love and faithfulness, found in Jesus, who is the Messiah. Humankind may not see God because of our sinfulness. Since being expelled from the Garden of Eden, few humans have caught so much as a glimpse of God. Moses caught a glimpse of Jesus' back, as did Hagar. The saints of the Old Testament were usually terrified of seeing God because God had said to them in Exodus 33, "No mortal may see me and live." They and we may not look on him. Yet Jesus himself, who is himself God, became a human to reveal God in himself. John's language is beautifully colourful. It paints word pictures that stay in our minds, even in translation. That section that Cess began by reading, the word became flesh. Literally, the Greek says, he pitched his tent. He came amongst us. And when our translation says he's close to the Father's side, close to the Father's heart, it literally means that he is in God's lap. In God's lap. Grace upon grace. What does grace look like? It looks like abundant life. Jesus described it to us. I'm going to use the Message translation again. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, said Jesus. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. This is grace. The word of the Father, through whom the world was created and by whom the world is sustained, has come into the world he created and will redeem, that those who believe in him may have the right or the power to become children of God, and in him, God the Father is revealed, that we may encounter God. The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. Amen.